Hello everyone, welcome back to Clinical Psychology Community UK. My name is Holly. I am an NHS assistant psychologist currently, and this is one of the most requested videos that I've ever had. I quite often ask people on the Instagram what videos they want to see, and this one is always one that comes up. So today we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. Very scary sounding, but it's one of my close personal friends, so we will get into this. Today, I'm going to tell you what imposter syndrome actually is, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's so prevalent in clinical psychology in a wider sense. I'm going to tell you all about my best friend status with imposter syndrome, and I'm going to give you some sort of theories that might help us understand it a little bit better, as well as some of the tips for coping with and challenging imposter syndrome. And then lastly, it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't mention something on reflection. So we're going to be doing a little bit of reflection too. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with it as well. So let's get straight into it. What is imposter syndrome? Okay, the first thing to say is that it's not a diagnosable condition if you sort of believe in diagnosis. It's not, in the DSM or in the ICD. It's not in any of that. It's a sort of term that was first identified as imposter phenomenon by Clance and Imes, who explored this kind of phenomenon in high achieving women. And I will link their paper down in the description down below, and I will link all the papers that I speak about today. I'll link those down below so you can go and check them out for yourself, because there's so much on imposter syndrome that you can see. But essentially, imposter syndrome is an experience of feeling incompetent and having deceived others about one's abilities. So it's feeling like you're the most inexperienced in the room, feeling like you're the most incompetent one in the room, feeling that actually one day someone's going to find you out as an imposter. They're going to find out that you don't know what you're talking about, and that somehow you managed to get through your psychology degree, but you actually don't know anything. Those sorts of things. Maybe that sounds familiar to you. I don't know. It's very familiar to me anyway. And lots of those would just come from my imposter voice just then. I want to talk to you a little bit about the prevalence of this, so sort of how common it is. So as I say, it was first sort of identified in high achieving women back in 1978, which is 30 odd years ago now, 34 years ago now, 33 years ago now. And it was thought to be more prevalent in women because society viewed women as less capable and competent than men. And I think that was particularly more the case in 1978, maybe not so much now, but I still think there is an element of that. So it was first thought to sort of be something that was far more prevalent in women. But lots of research now suggests that actually it is prevalent in men as well. Prevalence rates vary between sort of 9% and 80%, dependent on the sample, the recruitment, the screening methods, all of that stuff that the studies used. But what we do know is that many articles do suggest that it is higher in women, perhaps because we do need to prove ourselves in a different way. But also, I want to just touch a little bit on underrepresented groups, things like underrepresented ethnic groups. Research has found, this is in student samples in the US, that imposter syndrome is more prevalent in underrepresented ethnic groups, simply because they are more likely to suffer with the financial pressure of university. They're more likely to come from adverse backgrounds. They're more likely to come from lower income families and already feel like they're on the fringe, already feel like they're not included in the group. Already feel like that. So if they already feel like that, and then they're trying to break into a world where actually, they want to be included, then that's even more difficult. And perhaps that's part of why it is for women. So Clance and Imes looked at women in sort of financial settings, so like banks, investment funds, and women that did well in those positions, in typically very male-dominated ones. And that's kind of what they thought, is that when you're the underrepresented group going into the dominant group, then this is more likely to be triggered. Something like this is more likely to be triggered. There is actually one really good study that suggested that imposter syndrome status was more significantly associated with poor well-being than someone's minority status. which is super interesting. Anyway, I'll link all of this stuff down below. But essentially, imposter syndrome is feeling like you're an imposter and that one day you're going to be found out and someone's going to say, I have to take your assistant psychologist job away from you, or I have to take your training place away from you because you don't know what you're talking about. It's very, very stressful. Very stressful. Well, what does imposter syndrome look like? Okay, so there are lots of different behaviors in imposter syndrome. So firstly is diligence and hard work. And kind of a thought behind this might be, well, my stupidity and incompetence will be discovered one day, and therefore I need to work so much harder than anyone else. Because if I work hard, no one's going to find out that I don't know what I'm talking about. That's this kid right here. Yeah, this was my existence. Before I burnt out, this was absolutely my existence. Secondly, it can look like being dismissive of success. So my success is not because I'm skilled or competent, but it's because of luck. You know, I was really lucky to get this job. I worked really, really hard. That's why I got it, not because I'm intelligent. Or other people really helped me with this project. It wasn't anything to do with me, even if I led the project. Being very dismissive of success. And there's also, this one is really important to me, I think. So sense of phoniness. And I've kind of called that suppression of curiosity. So I'm not going to reveal my own thoughts and opinions. I'll just go along with everyone else's. Because I'm an imposter, if I make my voice known, someone's going to say to me, well, hang on, Holly, I don't quite agree with that. I don't think you know what you're talking about. I think you're an imposter. I think we should fire you. It spirals very quickly like that. So I think a suppression of curiosity is not asking those questions and not using your curious voice because you're scared that someone's going to find you out. And then the last one is using charm and perceptiveness to win approval of respected superiors. So this is about needing approval from your supervisor, but in your head, because you're an imposter, you're not skilled enough or competent enough to get that approval. So what you need to do is be charming and make jokes and be a really good people person, because you're not going to be able to get it through merit. So you need to get it because you're a good person. Those are the sort of things. Quite often this is what it looks like, and for some people, you know, for me, I absolutely have suppressed that curiosity, and it's something I've only noticed in the last year. But also the diligence and hard work has been my whole existence up until recently. So they kind of shift and change depending on where you are in your career, and actually depending on how good you are at reflecting at things. But you might find that one of these doesn't really fit with you, and that's fine. But some of them might, maybe. But where can imposter syndrome lead? Well, there's huge, significant links to poorer psychological well-being, things like distress and depression, low self-esteem, anxiety, frustration, shame. Huge links to that. Because, you know, for lots of us, our careers are everything. And if you actually feel like you're failing at your career, that's a really tough place to be when you devote your life to something. That's really, really tough. And it's not surprising that so many people are distressed and depressed and anxious about it. So another outcome, I suppose, of imposter syndrome can be stunting of personal development. You know, not seeking those opportunities to grow because of fear of failure and confirmation or discovery that you are an imposter. So if I said to my supervisor, oh, I really want to learn about X, I probably wouldn't ask that, because they might turn around and say, well, you should know about X already. How do you not know about that? Maybe you're not good enough for this role. Maybe we should fire you. Very stressful. So stunting of personal development, absolutely, it can lead to that. And these are kind of indicators for you to maybe tick off and say, yeah, actually, I've noticed that. Maybe I do have an imposter voice in my head somewhere. Another one, yeah, so you then, and the other thing is with personal development. So I've not asked for the opportunity to learn about X, but I'm not developing. So I then will interpret that lack of development as evidence that I'm an imposter. Well, I'm not developing. I must be rubbish. I must be no good, even though I'm not asking for the opportunities. You can also have quite a lot of job dissatisfaction. You know, if you're not developing, if you're not climbing somewhere, then how satisfied are you going to be? And I think that's particularly salient in psychology, definitely. And then burnout. Again, one of my close personal friends. I experienced burnout in my last role before becoming an assistant, and I do think it was largely because of my imposter syndrome, because I worked way too hard, and you just can't sustain that level of work. You just can't do it. I can't do it anyway, and I actually don't think it's healthy to do that at all. So if you're constantly working 20 hours a day or something insane to try and get all your work done and prove that you're worthy of the position that you've been given, then you are going to burn out. That's definitely a risk. And the last one is difficulties working with others. And again, this is around the fear of being discovered as an imposter, as someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. So actually, you might prefer to work on your own, because if you're working on your own, you know yourself what you can do. If you're working with a team, someone in that team might say, well, Holly, what do you think? And they might disagree. And then you might think, oh my God, I don't actually know what I'm talking about. Maybe lots of this is just based on my own personal experience, who knows? But those are some of the things where, the imposter syndrome can lead to, particularly chronic imposter syndrome, which is essentially a way of thinking, And I kind of want to talk a little bit about maintenance. And for this, I'm going to use the vicious flower formulation. It's the idea that the problem is in the middle and the petals on the flower are things that maintain that. So it could be behaviours, it could be thought patterns, interpersonal relationships or conflicts, could be anything. And this might be different for everyone. I've kind of put quite a general one in here, but it could be very different. So let's start in the middle. We have imposter syndrome. That's kind of the central issue, is that, you feel like an imposter. One of the things that can maintain it is the diligence and hard work, because it feeds into it. Oh, well, I'm only getting that approval because I'm working hard, or I'm only getting results because I'm working hard. Being dismissive of success. Oh, it's only luck. It's only luck that I got an interview this year. It's only luck that I got offered the job. Being very dismissive can maintain that, because you're never acknowledging what your skills are. You're constantly saying, I'm not good enough, in your head. Suppression of curiosity and your own voice. So if you're never using your own voice and you're never being curious, how is that going to help you break your imposter syndrome? It's not. What you're doing is suppressing the voice that can challenge your imposter syndrome. So by suppressing it, all you're doing is letting that imposter voice grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And then using charm to win approval. Again, oh, my supervisor only likes me and gives me good projects to do because she likes me as a person and because I'm funny. Or because I'm useful, not because I'm skilled, intelligent, competent, those sorts of things. So those are kind of the main central bits. But there might be some kind of secondary petals that will be different for everybody that might feed into it. Could be about, societal beliefs about your group. So like we were saying, initially, imposter phenomenon was thought to be far more prevalent in women, because women were believed societally to be less capable than men and less competent than men in lots of different arenas, particularly things like practical things, or business even, it could be anything. So that definitely could, and that actually could be translated to lots of different groups and identities within us. Social graces, again, this is sort of a similar thing. So your social graces might impact on the way that you feel. So people from working class backgrounds, when they come into sort of academia, quite often the narrative around that, in papers that I've read, the narrative is very much, I don't fit in here, because they're using lots of words that I don't really know, and they have experiences that I don't really know, and it's very intimidating. So that might have something to do with it. And it might maintain that imposter syndrome, the idea that, every social function that you go to, or that you don't fit in. So you're maintaining the idea that you're an imposter. And again, one that's really important to me as well is family scripts. So it might be in your family, they might, I don't know, there could be a bad influence in your family that suggests that actually maybe you're not good enough. There could be lots of things. It could be your relationship that you're in that might be abusive. It could be lots and lots of different things that could maintain that imposter syndrome. And again, it will be different for everybody. So I will talk to you a little bit about my experience with it in a little bit. But I want to talk about why it's so common in clinical psychology. Because I'm sure lots of us are sitting here going, oh, this is exactly how I feel. And, it's such a nightmare. but it's super common in clinical psychology, particularly at the moment. It's so common. Every single person that I speak to about this sort of thing absolutely knows what you're talking about completely. So why is it so common? Well, places to study and work in clinical psychology are hugely oversubscribed in the UK. We know this. You know, for assistant psychologist positions, there could be over 100 applicants for one job. For the Bath doctorate course this year and for the Oxford one, they had over 650 applications for sort of 20 places or 30 places. It's hugely oversubscribed. And the other problem with that is that candidates are all so evenly matched. So my parents will say to me like, oh, but you've got this and you do this and you've got this experience. And I go, yeah, that's great, but so does everyone else. That's part of the problem, is that everybody is so evenly matched. Another thing that adds to that is that the narrative is don't go for clinical, you won't get on. I thought this was an experience me and only the people in the room had on the first day of my psychology degree. Don't go for clinical, don't bother, you won't get on. And the implication with that is that you won't be good enough to get on. There's too many people going for it, you won't be good enough, you will never get there. So what sort of message is that from your teachers to tell you to not go for it because you'll never get on, or your supervisor? What a damaging thing to say to somebody that might already be experiencing imposter syndrome. You know, it's very difficult. So in this competitive environment, you have to remember that we have all achieved to get where we are. It might be, you know, getting your degree place, doing your GCSEs, your A-levels, getting your degree place, finishing your degree, doing multiple degrees. It could be so many things, and it's such an achievement that we are so unable to acknowledge in our journeys because we think, yeah, but we're not on the doctorate yet, or yeah, but we don't have an assistant post yet. No, but we do need to acknowledge these achievements, because otherwise you're perpetuating that imposter syndrome. You're just adding a petal to that vicious flower, and it's going to keep it perpetuating it. But also could be getting research published. That's another achievement that lots of people have, or doing a PhD. Jobs, getting interviews, finishing an application, getting offers, performing well in the job, getting promotions. So many of us are so skilled and experienced and knowledgeable and competent and intelligent and all the good things. Yet this imposter syndrome holds us back in so many ways. And I think all of this considered, if we are confident about our own ability in psychology, I think we are often seen as inexperienced and ignorant and naive, I think. So in my first role, my support worker role, I was working in the same team as a psychologist. And one of the psychologists that I didn't know, it was in another team, said to me, you know, oh, you're very confident that you're going to get onto training. Do you know anything about it? And at that point, I'd already applied twice. So I found that quite offensive. But I was confident in myself back then. But I was definitely seen as inexperienced and ignorant, which actually feeds into the imposter syndrome, because that comment made me go, oh my God, maybe I don't know anything about it. And actually, maybe I am too confident, and maybe I should be less confident. What a ridiculous way to think. Of course you need to be confident. You've got to be confident. Confidence is half the battle a lot of the time. And that imposter syndrome is taking that confidence away. Anyway. We think we can't be confident in our ability because ability enough isn't enough to succeed. We need everything else. That's often the thought. The other reason I think it's so difficult is that seeing others succeed is hard work. It's hard. Whatever we say, it's really difficult when you've applied to a job and you see someone else has got it, or you've applied to 10 jobs and you see that someone else has got an assistant job and you want it, or the doctorate. See, other people will always succeed. It's really difficult. But for me, one of my reflections from this is that seeing other people succeed, particularly in my case, getting on the doctorate, it reminds you that success in clinical psychology is possible. Hundreds of people get onto the doctorate every year. Therefore, the problem must be with me. That's how I think about it. And I would never encourage anyone else to think that way. But that's definitely how I've been thinking about it because of that imposter voice. I'd be thinking, well, what's wrong with me then? It can't be the system because the system works. Lots of people get on. Why is everyone else getting on? They must be so much better than me. They must be so much more ready than me. I must not be good enough. Can you now see how it feeds in? It's so common. Ugh. The other thing is, clinical psychology is a heavily white female middle class field. So not being from a white female middle class group might make us believe, sorry, that should be believe, not belief, that we don't belong right from the beginning. You know, I think it's definitely an issue that we know needs to be addressed, but we already feel like an imposter if we're not in that group. So if you don't have the royal flush of being white female middle class, you may already feel, oh God, well, I don't fit in, and how am I going to do this? So that's another reason why I think it's so common in clinical psychology. So my message from that is you are not alone. Everybody is feeling this. I can almost guarantee you that everybody, you know, in your AP group or on the course or in your psychology course that are going to go for clinical will be feeling this. They will be, and it's normal. And there are ways that we can go around it. Before I talk about my experience, I just want to talk about some theories. You know, we're psychology people. I think we should just link in some theories. So one that seems prevalent for me is social comparison theory. And it suggests that humans, you know, we have an innate drive to compare ourselves to one another. Upward drive or upward social comparison is comparing ourselves to people perceived to be doing better than us. So for me, that looks like going on LinkedIn every day and seeing all the different people that have said that they've got onto the doctorate. I'm comparing myself to them. I'm going on their profiles. I'm saying, right, how many assistant jobs did they have? And when did they do their degree? And what other research experience have they got? It's wearing and not necessarily helpful, and it's definitely exhausting. But that is an upward social comparison I think a lot of us will feed into. And again, that's like a petal on the vicious flower. It's going to maintain that imposter syndrome. And this upward drive actually is stronger when the individual is invested in the trait or the ability. So I could look at loads of different things on LinkedIn and see loads of people that are, you know, succeeding at getting places on accountancy courses or learning how to be mortgage brokers or something. It doesn't interest me. I'm never going to look at it. I'm never going to compare myself to it because it just doesn't interest me. Whereas psychology, oh my God, way too often am I, you know, comparing myself to other people that are in a better position, people that have got onto the doctorate, and, you know, people that are on the doctorate, people who are qualified, all sorts. But that's just one of them. I did read a paper suggesting that introversion, which defined by Jung was wanting to hide ourselves from the outside world, is actually linked to imposter syndrome. You know, there are some links between them. So the idea that, you know, as we feel like we're imposters, we don't want that to be shown to the outside world. And that makes us introverted potentially, or maybe we're introverted and then we develop imposter syndrome. Who knows? It's chicken and the egg. It's very difficult to say. And the last one is attachment theory. So again, there has been some research suggesting that insecure attachment and imposter syndrome might be linked in some way. Again, a causal relationship is impossible to work out, but they both involve self-doubt and anxiety. So the idea that someone with an insecure attachment, which might become that might manifest as wanting to people please, can somehow lead to imposter syndrome, or somehow maybe make someone predisposed to it. There are just some theories, but as I say, I'll link lots of papers down below if you're interested in looking at it. It's been really cathartic for me to look at it, I have to say, so I would definitely encourage you to do that. But I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience, and I'm not going to go on for ages about this, I promise. So in terms of my history at school, I was surrounded by, and I'm not just saying this, like, they were ridiculously intelligent people. Like, I think it was like 30 or 40 people in my year got into Oxbridge out of like 120, 150, somewhere around that. Ridiculous. I never felt clever enough. That's the truth of it. I was always told I was good because I worked hard. You know, I don't remember, maybe I dismissed it, but I don't remember being told you're intelligent by my teachers. I remember being told that I worked hard a lot, and I kind of clung on to that. And the other thing that I want to say is that my school was quite focused on male success. I mean, the boys' sports teams were funded better. The boys weren't punished as much for things that girls were punished for. There was a lot of, inequality. Male achievements were more recognised, that sort of thing. So I think as a girl in that environment, I do think I developed a kind of chip on my shoulder, as well as not feeling intelligent. So that was a bit tricky. In terms of my family, they always gave me confidence. They always told me that I was clever, that I could do whatever I wanted to do, that I could do whatever a man could do, always. But because I spent so long at school, I went to school 6 days a week. So because I went to school, and they were long days as well, because I was at school for so long, it was so incongruent with what my family were telling me. School won in the end. All the messaging I was getting from that environment was winning over my family environment. So as much as I appreciate my family giving me that confidence, it's only now that I'm getting it, because I'm able to reflect and think, actually, I am good at some things, but that's one part of it. Now, in terms of jobs, let's go for jobs. So trying to get a job in psychology, I found bloody impossible, quite frankly. It took me 4 years to get an assistant job, at least 50 interviews, at least, and countless applications. Like, I cannot tell you how many applications I've done. And I'm really not exaggerating. I have no reason to exaggerate, because it's actually a little bit shameful that it took this long. But the feedback was always, someone just scored higher than you. You were second on the list. Someone just beat you to it. Someone just... So that was very difficult to get onto. And then the doctorate. This is my 6th year, possibly 6 rejections. Still jury's out on one of them. But it's a lot of rejection. And it's a lot of what's wrong with me. That was a lot of what it came. So for me, what maintains my imposter syndrome, or certainly what did maintain it, was upward social comparison. Constantly comparing myself to others and thinking, God, they're so competent. Why do I sound so not competent? And what is it that differentiates us? Beliefs about myself not being good enough. Again, that chip on my shoulder from school, I think, which carried on into, I'm not good enough to get a psychology job. Being aggressively dismissive of evidence that I am skilled, intelligent, competent, definitely. And I had dismissive of evidence, blah, blah, blah. But I put in aggressively dismissive, because if somebody did try to tell me that I was, that the piece of work that I did was good, I would be like, oh my God, no, stop talking to me. Like, aggressively dismissive and argumentative, combative about the fact that I was skilled or intelligent, because it didn't fit with my imposter syndrome. It didn't fit. So I dismissed it. And that kind of links with the inability to acknowledge my successes and achievements. I think that's a really big thing that has maintained that imposter syndrome for me, and something that I'm definitely inputting more into my life. So moving forwards, I actually feel like I've got quite a good handle on my imposter syndrome, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the tips that helped me, that hopefully will help you in managing it. Because I don't know if imposter syndrome will ever go away. I think it's kind of like an annoying voice, and that I could conceptualize it as an annoying voice in the back of my head. It's just in a horrible kind of voice, just saying, you're not good enough. You are never going to get it. You're not good enough. You might as well give up now. You're going to be crap forever. That voice that's always in the back of my head. And I think curing it, or getting rid of it, or fixing it, is an overachieving goal. I don't think we'll get there. I think it's too hard to get to. But what we can do is learn how to challenge it and quieten that voice down. So the first thing, you know me, I'll always ask you to reflect, but this is really helpful to identify that imposter voice and differentiate it from your voice. So once you, I know this sounds so risky, but in my head, I've got me, myself, my voice, my opinions, my values, my beliefs, and I've got an imposter voice, and I argue against it. I will make a point to argue against it. But honestly, the way that I've noticed this, because I just thought that imposter voice was my voice initially, so I needed to kind of diffuse that I needed to separate them. And I did that by keeping a reflective portfolio. I've done a video on how to keep one, so I'll link that down below as well. Reflect on things that went well as badly. It's not just thinking, what went wrong? What can I do better next time? It's thinking, what went right? What are the skills that I brought to that? And what can I bring next time? It helps you develop your voice that counters the imposter voice, as I said. And it also helps you gather evidence that you're competent. You know, when you're reflecting, you can, on the things that went well, you can be thinking, well, what did others tell me about my skills and my performance? And what were the client outcomes? What work that I've done have I been really proud of? And it's okay to be proud of stuff and confident in yourself. You're not inexperienced or naive or ignorant if you're confident. It's okay to be confident. So that reflection and thinking about exactly what your imposter syndrome sounds like, or if you can visualize what that, you know, if there's a body that had that voice, like what would they look like? That might be helpful too. Makes it easier to differentiate between your voice and theirs. So again, this is something about reframing. Consider the context that you're in. Okay. Remember that social media isn't real life. That's a message I tell myself every single day. Particularly in the psychology world, I do think on Instagram particularly, lots of big accounts are really good at showing the good sides as well as the bad sides. You know, I think a lot of them are posting about times when they're feeling rough or times when they're not feeling confident or when they make mistakes. And I think that's so useful to put out into the world. But remember that, you know, there are accounts that you can follow that have a realistic portrayal of what's going on for them. It's not all just everyone's doing amazing. So just be aware of that. Also, remember that way more people don't get the job or the place than people that do. So like I say, right, Oxford had over 650 applicants for 36 places. That means that 620 odd did not get a place. So way more people don't get the job or the place than people that do. So you are in the majority. You're not, you know, you're not all rubbish. There's just not enough places. Remember it. It's the system, not you. Gather evidence. So what I mean by that is, like I just said, so with 640 people applied for Oxford and did not get a place this year, that's evidence that there is not enough places and that those 36 had to be absolutely incredible, which of course they were, but that's the problem. It's not you, it's the system. And the other thing is failure, which I think is a difficult word, is essential for learning. Failure, because failure, you quite often think, I'm a failure, and it's the worst thing that you can possibly be as someone with imposter thoughts. But making mistakes and failing is essential learning. Like, it's absolutely essential. And I know it sounds really cliche, but it is. Just think back to some of the times where you think you failed. You will have learned the most about yourself. So particularly for me, not getting a doctorate place for the 6th time was a big failure for me. I really thought that this was going to be the year. And I've learned so much more about myself in the last 3 months since I got the 2 months since I got the rejection than I did before. So just remember that, reframe that failure as, okay, what's the opportunity to learn? And remember that not getting a job or not getting a place does not make you a failure. It doesn't make you a failure. Just remember that. You're not a failure. Some more tips. Connect with others. Okay, so this kind of links to the social media thing. You know, there are lots and lots of people that didn't get on. So connect. There's Facebook groups, there's Instagram pages, there's loads of places that you can connect. Imposter syndrome and not succeeding in psychology is really isolating because you think it's just you. So when I posted the video about not getting on for the 6th time, which I'll link down below if you've not seen it, I had so many people message me and say, no, don't worry, I've applied 8 times and I got on the 9th time, and I applied 10 times. There are so many more people, and I did not know that because nobody posts that they didn't get on 10 times. You know, that doesn't happen. People don't do it. So I just assumed that 6 was like a stupid number because everybody else that I see gets on 1st or 2nd time. So I just thought that I was a complete failure. But connecting with others has helped me realise that actually that isn't the case. Connect with others who have failed. Yeah, connect with other people that have gone through this. Connect with me. I've failed 6 times. Connect with me. I'll help you out. And realizing that you're not alone is really powerful. So those are some sort of tips, but remember that this is kind of, you've got this imposter voice or way of thinking, and it's not easy to change. It takes work and time and reflection to, first off, you need to identify that voice and what triggers it. But ultimately, be kind to yourself. You're doing your best. You will get there eventually, and you are good enough. If you remember anything from this video, just please, I beg of you to remember that you are good enough. The system is broken. You are good enough. You will get there. And I just want to end with some reflection. So I think one of the reasons that imposter syndrome and the literature around it has resonated with me is because it is from a kind of critical feminist perspective. The idea that it's prevalent in women because women were seen as less capable and everything around that. I absolutely love it. And I also think it's quite, a lot of the research is fairly inclusive or starting to become more inclusive to people from all different backgrounds. But I think it speaks to so many different backgrounds as well. And the other thing is that it's so easy to have blinkers on as an aspiring clinical psychologist. I just need to work. I just need to work and work and work, and I'll get there eventually. And I can't enjoy anything else in my life. And I need to work and work and work and do webinars in the evenings. And I need to work and work until I get there. Well, okay. The DClin is not everything. It isn't. I know what you're saying. I know what you're thinking, because this is exactly how I felt. But it is actually not everything. And you need to have other things in your life, or you're probably not going to get through the DClin. You will get there eventually. Go and do other things in your life that you enjoy, you know. And there are also so many other options for us as skilled and qualified people that have lots to offer. You know, how many more years can I be on a band 4, band 5 wage? You know, with the skills that I've got, I don't feel like I deserve to be on that low wage anymore. So what else could I go and do? Well, you could be a psychological wellbeing practitioner or a children's wellbeing practitioner. You could be a clinical associate psychologist that do those sorts of training courses, or apprentice psychologist, I think they're called now as well. You could be a psychotherapist. Go and train and do therapy. Great. You could be a researcher. And there are so many more. We have so many skills that we can use. Do not let that imposter syndrome stop you from achieving whatever it is that you want to achieve. I hope that helped in some way to somebody out there struggling, feeling like an imposter, feeling like you're not good enough. You're not alone. Every single one of us has experienced this at some point in our lives, particularly if you're going for clinical psychology. You just will have done. Don't forget that you can follow us on all the socials down below at Clinical Psychology Community UK. Get in touch. Let us know what your experience of imposter syndrome is. What else will be helpful from me? What are the videos and stuff? And I really look forward to seeing your comments. Take care. Bye.